You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today's topic is the Season 1 episode, It's Never Too Late.
So Joshua, I saw the title card and my first thought was, what is Joshua going to think of these trains? Obviously, you've got the imagery of a light at the end of the tunnel that is associated with trains. This is a terrifying looking train in this title card here. I love the use of shadow. So immediately my thought is, we are getting something very noir, and we're getting something with the imagery of trains and lights.
So the train is a pretty obvious pull from the episode. As we see, fading mob boss Arnold Stromwell is terrified of trains for very good reasons, and it's going to keep coming up. And so on that, it's obvious, right? The bits that I love the most about this title card, first of all, you mentioned the noirness of it, which is true in Light and Shadow, but this is one of the more obviously airbrushed title cards.
Yeah.
It's a little fuzzy around the edges. It's almost like that train could be seen through mist or something like that, which is very much a trademark of actual noir film.
There's a use of fog. They use fog in this episode too. Yeah.
Oh, they do. They do. But when you look at actual from the period mid to late 40s, like they were literally airbrushing the title cards and then holding them in front of cameras or putting them in like still cam. That they would bring that kind of fuzzy edged airbrush touch to this one. They do it to other ones, but it just really stuck out to me because, again, maybe it's because I'm looking at a physical thing and the light is very bright but also diffused through that non-existent mist. Loved it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel. It did really remind me of that joke. I was looking at the light at the end of the tunnel and it turned out to be a train, but in a really not funny way.
No.
Like, that's the gag, but in this, it's like, no, Stromwell, for real.
It's a train.
You are coming to the end of your life, and just like at the beginning of your life, that light is a train. Make a choice, right? So it really brought that symmetry back to me, because we'll talk more about how the episode is put together, I'm sure, but that at the first time that we're introduced to trains, it is Arnold and his brother Mike saving each other from trains, and at the end of the episode, we have Arnold and Mike saving each other from trains, both literal and metaphorical.
There's something very poetic about all of this and speaks to the weird symmetry of life. And obviously, it's telegraphed in the very first scene. Hey, this guy's stealing candy, and this guy's saying, no, it's probably not a great idea. Let's stick to the rules. Let's play it safe. This is a slippery slope. And obviously, we see throughout the episode, I guess the priest reveal isn't until the end.
I feel like it's reasonably obvious that the good kid is the priest, except then later we are led to believe that the good kid does not survive the train wreck. So there is some question there.
Yeah.
Now, the reveal that he is both the good kid and Arnold's brother does not come until the end. Yeah. And it's like, oh, man, look out.
Right. And they're still, at the end of their life, doing the same thing. And it's
the trajectories they set as children remained until the end. And finally, at the end, Mike gets to save his brother in the way he's been trying to more or less his whole life.
Right.
So good. I actually jokingly in my notes called him Chekhov's priest, because when Batman comes to see him the first time, it's pretty low key. I mean, it's obvious that this priest is somehow involved in Batman's plan for Stromwell.
Yeah.
But at that point, we don't know what Batman's plan is.
Yeah, no, I actually thought it was a really nice touch, because I thought one thing I appreciate about this episode is actually how they utilize Batman. Because firstly, supporting character. We'll talk about that in a minute.
A supporting character in his own show.
In his own
there's a
show.
lot to be said there.
And the way Batman talks to Priest, like, oh, hey, he's trying to utilize his resources. Hey, there's this guy, I can tell he's got the spiritual burden on his heart for, he's spiritually hollow, it would seem, based on his observations.
Meaning Stromwell.
Stromwell.
Yeah.
Stromwell.
There's a hole where his heart should be.
Right, where he feels empty and hopeless, and the crime won't feel it anymore. He's just at the edge of his life, and he's being pushed out of his own game, and Batman realizes that. So I was like, oh, Batman's going to the priest and trying to have the priest go talk to this guy and inspire him to do the right thing. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. But it makes way more sense at the end when we find out, oh, they're relatives, they're brothers. Holy smokes. I didn't see that coming.
There is some implication in that initial conversation between Mike and Batman when he says, I don't believe you'd give up on any soul, especially this one. It's like, okay, you've got somebody with some kind of connection to Stromwell, and it's one that you, scary vigilante guy, understand. It's not a thing he heard about. It feels like they've had a conversation about this before. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of one of my favorite aspects of the Shadow, who's very much a proto-Batman. Like, earliest Batman is basically Shadow ripoff with more colorful clothes. Now we expect Batman to do all of his own work, not just the detection, but he's also the one who's building the Batmobile or doing the engineering problem or whatever. But the Shadow had a network of informants. Some of them thought he was a criminal, and that they were like in his organization. Some of them were people whose lives he saved.
Right.
And he just turned them to the side of, you owe me your life now. I really like the idea that Batman has a similar
network. In the city.
And we've talked about this a little bit with Unforgotten.
Yes.
Right? It's not the same priest, which feels like a lost opportunity.
I know. But it's great that he's reaching out, utilizing his resources at the street level. This is a guy who knows Gotham, right? And he knows personally. He knows
not
the
just
citizens.
I know crime. He does, but it's not just that. He knows, that's right. You nailed it. He knows the citizens. He knows the connection between Arnold and Mike, and I don't want to say exploiting it because that sounds sinister, but he just knows it and knows that this is our last chance to save him. You and I have different reasons for wanting to save Arnold Stromwell. I care about Gotham. You care about him personally, but this is our last chance.
Right.
You and me, Father Mike. So great.
It's a really beautiful redemption story. One other thing I want to hit on here is let's talk about Rupert Thorne first, though. What a great bad guy. What a great use of Rupert Thorne. I love this because it takes you back to like almost like the weird Batman Year One type stories where Batman's fighting actual mobsters instead of supervillains. There's a mob turf war going on between two mobsters, and Batman's got to figure out how to deal with it. And it's not necessarily with fists. Even he's trying to persuade one to make a good choice that would stop the crime war, right? So I think it was really great use of those kind of mobster figures again, which ties into that noir theme again. So that was a really good use of style there. But I think Rupert Thorne here really sells me as a great classic mobster. He's relentless. He knows how to blackmail people. He pulls every trick in the book, right?
And I think there's a reason. I think you're hitting the reason that Rupert Thorne is a recurring character, and all of these other mob bosses that he double crosses or does a deal with or whatever, they come and go. Like, we never see Stromwell again.
Right.
There's good reason in this for that not to happen, but we don't see most of these mobsters recur. They're just mobsters. When we need the mob, we go to the Rupert Thorne well, and it is a good well.
Oh, yeah. It's a great well.
It is a deep well.
It keeps on giving. It's like, man, this guy is just a good bad guy, He just knows how to like do the thing mobsters are good at doing. I don't know. I'm trying to articulate. He blackmails people, makes everything very personal. He is not afraid to kill. I mean,
he is still not afraid to get his hands dirty.
Right.
Okay. So he is the mob boss that clawed his way up through the ranks, and you can tell because at the end of the day, he's like, "Saddle up, boys. We're going to deal with the thing." He did the same thing in Two-Face,
right?
To his detriment,
of course.
But you'll see it again here, and as a preview for future episodes. If we want to try and create the same kind of narrative that Batman Year One did, where Batman started out fighting mobsters and it transitioned to weirdos, he invites a weirdo into Gotham in a future episode that almost proves his undoing.
Right.
And we're not going to talk any more about that. There's a future episode. It's going to be great.
Coming soon.
But Rupert Thorne is reused with good reason. He is great. And the voice actor and everything is just nails that guy. I want to see more of him, whereas I feel like I've seen all of Stromwell I need to see redemptive arc or not.
Right. Now, this hits on my next point, though, because Rupert Thorne is definitely not your typical Saturday morning cartoon type bad guy, right? This is more like a guy you'd see in The Godfather or Goodfellas, right?
Absolutely.
A tamed-down version of one of those guys. And this brings me to the point. When I was watching this episode, the whole time, I'm just like, Batman's a supporting character. We're talking about mobsters. This is very noir. How the hell is this considered children's television? And how the hell did this get made as children's television? Like, this is clearly not something I think if I, at age 5 or 6, I would have been into at all. I would have been bored instantly or confused. It was like, when's Batman going to show up? Because he's really not in the episode that much.
He's absolutely critical to the plot.
Yes.
You couldn't do this same story without Batman. And I have some literary allusions to make later to prove that point. But at the same time, it's not his story. It's Stromwell's story, and Batman's just in it. And the fascinating thing about that to me, I'll remind you some things from our earlier episodes. They never talk about this. And the older I get, the more I feel like this is becoming apocryphal, even though it is things I remember. This show originally debuted in primetime on Sunday night there was not a WB at the time. It was on Fox. Okay.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, it was on a major network, Sunday night, primetime. There is a reason that Two-Face is terrifying in his reveal. There is a reason that we get a lot of these, what we would call more mature. I grew up on Super Friends, and I loved Super Friends. I came to this as a 13 or 14-year-old. If I came to this, as you say, as a 7, 8, 9-year-old, I don't care. I do not care about this Batman story because it's so mature.
It's so mature, and it assumes you... I think to really appreciate an episode like this, you have to have such a knowledge about noir and mob films, some appreciation there for it to really understand. Otherwise, it feels like a throwaway episode. If you don't get any of those nuances or any of the detail of the style, like I feel like this is a throwaway episode, even as an average viewer who isn't like into that type of stuff.
A person who doesn't care about noir films or mob stuff, right? Not even somebody who just showed up wanting Batman and supervillain things, but they just don't care about this stuff, could walk away from this episode saying, that was really boring and a waste of my 22 minutes.
Right.
Whereas I, at least, and I'm pretty sure you too, are blown away by this episode.
I'm blown away by what they were able to accomplish in a 20-minute storyline on television like this. And again, I didn't realize, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually hadn't realized this was primetime Sunday night airing.
Yep.
I knew the Fox.
That didn't last very long. That did not last
How
very
often
long.
does that happen in 2017 or hell in the last 20 years? How has that happened? A 30-minute animated show aired in primetime on a Sunday night up against like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and Westworld. I mean,
can you imagine it? Even with a character like Batman, can you imagine it now? Not really.
I mean, because even like Gotham doesn't pit itself against like Sunday night viewing.
Nope.
So man, just a crazy storm of. I mean, the universe had to align so perfectly for this show to get made in the way it got made, and the fact that this aired in primetime on top of just the type of stories telling is a small miracle.
These creators, with their influences, with the free reign that they were given, I guess it's going to be in primetime, oh, wait, it's not. It was a perfect storm of opportunity. And it makes this oddball show that is so good.
So good.
But is also like, what? What kind of Batman cartoon
exactly.
are we watching?
Okay. So towards the end of the episode, because I hadn't seen this one, or at least not seen it in a long time, so I didn't remember the twist. So I was like, oh my God, is this kid going to get hit by a train? Oh my God.
Yeah.
His kid, he got hit by a train. And then like, I mean, there was about a good 30 seconds there. I was like, this show is so dark. And this is after I watched Two-Face already. I was like, I just don't even know what to say. And it's like, oh, well, it's a good thing. Knock on wood. And he taps his wood leg. I was like, oh, okay. He only lost his leg.
No. You want to talk, again, 22-minute episode that you are going to turn into this mini noir film that has not one but two twists involving those kids. Because one, you think that kid's going to die.
Right.
You think he's dead. Oh, wait, he's not. Oh, by the way, also, he's my little brother. What?
Who was the priest we met earlier in the
episode. Priest we met earlier is that kid, and Stromwell's little brother, and it's like twist within twist within twist, 22 minutes. Yeah, it's so good.
It's amazing. And I do want to also kind of second your point there. Like, if I had seen this as a 8-9-year-old, probably, I wouldn't have been into it. It's funny because I didn't come to Batman the Animated Series until a little later, because obviously I was too young when it was actually airing to appreciate it. And I also didn't have Warner Brothers, and I didn't know it was on Fox. So I actually remember I randomly just caught, I think it's just called Trial. It's the episode of, I think, season 3 or so. Anyway, it's when Batman's put on trial by all the supervillains. And I was like, whoa, what is this? This is really cool. I want to see more of it. And then,
that
of course,
is also a really deep, nuanced episode that I think you get away with as children's television more because it's just filled to the brim with supervillains.
Yeah.
But it's really, there is so much going on in that episode. We'll get to it. But I mean, it's quite a thing.
It's like one of those things. I caught that episode and I was intrigued, and then I didn't have the access to that content for a long time. But it wasn't until I got to middle school and had access to fast internet where I could download TV shows and then Justice League was on TV at the time. That said, ooh, and I had seen a couple episodes of Batman Beyond also, and I was like, oh, cool. I've got to go figure out what all this is about before I actually got to go all the way back to BTAS originally and like admire it as a teenager. Yeah. Really, as a 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old.
One of the first box sets of shows I bought on DVD was Batman the Animated Series that was something like 20 years ago already, and most of these episodes I had not seen since they aired originally. Because once the style changed, Superman comes out, and then they changed the style of the Batman show to be more in line with Superman, and that feeds into Justice League. They stopped showing a lot of these earlier ones because they don't look the same. They just don't look the same as the later ones.
Right.
I ran out to buy those box sets because I was, same as you are now, it was like a rediscovery for me because I had seen them when I was a kid, but it had been 10 years or more, and I don't remember them. And I think that's why I've added to our watch list some of these that just struck me as, how did this get made?
How did this get made? This episode is, it is mind-blowing. How did a story like this get made? How is Batman a supporting character in this story? Like, it's all just so bonkers, but it all comes together in a way that I think is really, really, really beautiful and stunning, and goes to show why I think this is an episode, even though it's not one I think people instantly remember. This is like one of those things when you think of reasons this show was so brilliant, it's because they could tell stories like this one.
This seems like a good place for me to bring in my literary illusions.
Oh, yes.
So I was noticing, of course, that Batman was very much a secondary character in this. That's not surprising. We'd seen it already with POV. We'd seen it with Underdwellers. It'll happen again. But it kept tickling my memory. Like this thing with Stromwell, I was like, this is a thing. He goes to 3 different locations. He sees different parts of his life. He's trying.
Go on.
Somebody is trying to give him a redemptive arc. And somewhere along that 3rd or 4th rewatch, I realized, oh, this is a Christmas Carol.
Oh my gosh. It's a Christmas Carol set in a noir universe.
It is a noir Christmas Carol, and I guess it's more like a Gotham Carol because it's not built around a holiday. It's very much built around the city in different eras and at different levels and with 3 very different ghost figures. We'll talk about them in a minute. But I mean, that's when I was like, oh, somebody, whether they meant to or not, sat down at a Batman the Animated Series writer's room in 1992 or 3 and remade a Christmas Carol with Batman as one of the ghosts.
Like, how can we tell Christmas Carol? And he is, I imagine, Ghost of Christmas, future, past?
I maintain that Batman is the Ghost of Christmas future, but I'll tell you why I say that by starting with the past. I think that Stromwell's Ghost of Gotham past, is actually Mike, right? It's Father Mike,
right,
who turns out to be his brother and was his childhood friend. 2 or 3 different flashbacks in the episode. We come back to that place. We get more of the story every time, but we come back there every time. Mike is representative of Stromwell's past and where they both chose their different paths that they were going to stay on pretty much forever until the present of this story when we are led to believe Stromwell pulls it out. But along the way, then, we're shown a Ghost of Gotham present in his son, the barely recovering drug addict. The drug addict who is only recovering because he's in withdrawals. This is what you have made, Stromwell.
Your family is ruined.
Well, not just your family, right? But
Gotham,
you've ruined
too.
Gotham.
Yeah.
You've poisoned Gotham the same way that you've poisoned your son. This is the city you made. And he even says earlier in the episode, Rupert Thorne's not going to take this city from me. I'm the one who made it what it is. And then his son shows him exactly what kind of city he made. And then I say Batman is the Ghost of Gotham future in a way because obviously he's kind of that dark specter like we expect from the Christmas Carol. Right. But he's also the one who's saying, you can do something different with your future. You can give me the file. Batman is giving him the opportunity to change the future, to change his trajectory. Right. And with him, the trajectory of the city. Pretty great. Pretty fun.
It's a really brilliant move by Batman too. You know what I mean? Like instead of again, this is not Batman. He does a little bit of crime fighting. Especially my favorite was when he landed on Rupert Thorne at the end, as the brothers were having this beautiful like reunion moment, and Rupert Thorne shows up with his machine gun. He's like, "Not today!" And Batman just like lands on him. You know,
Batman went to traction.
Yeah,
and Batman went home happy.
Yeah, but I mean, outside of that though, there's not really a lot of crime fighting from him. It's more of trying to influence psychologically and emotionally, trying to influence this mobster who he has identified, who is in a moment of weakness and having a bit of a crisis, an identity crisis.
There's a couple of things I see there. One is I really love seeing Batman fight crime on different levels. Like, of course, he's out there to punch muggers and stop arsonists and stuff like that. And, of course, by day, you've got Bruce Wayne doing all kinds of social work and giving his money and starting the Wayne Foundation and all that kind of thing. But the middle space there, the kind of long game crime fighting that Batman can do is to look for these kind of opportunities to make big changes to organized crime in Gotham. And it just shows that he's really, kind of like we talked about, he knows what's going on with the citizens. He knows that that's a thing he might be able to do with Stromwell. You'll note he's not actually trying to flip Rupert Thorne's heart.
Right.
Because Rupert Thorne doesn't have a heart to flip.
Nope.
Stromwell had a heart. He lost it. Here's an opportunity to give it back. I love that. You get to see Batman doing physical threats when necessary, but also, in a way, emotional and psychological threats. And it's really
which is part of what
effective.
makes Batman. Yeah, it's effective, and that's one of the things that set Batman apart from other superheroes. Anyways, he's very psychological and methodical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think this is put to great use here.
It's nice to see that when it's not just scaring the pants off people, right? I want to see the detective, the person who has dedicated his life to eradicating crime. That means not just putting out fires. Right? That means dealing with the things that cause the fires.
Right.
I really like both literary allusions and seeing Batman be multi-layered, even as a secondary character.
Right. What's great about when they use Batman as a supporting character, the thing I really like is that there's always a different facet. They're using him in a very specific way. Yeah, he's not front and center, but that also gives the writers an opportunity to showcase the variety of things he can do and the different ways he impacts Gotham and all the tools that he has at his disposal. He's all things to all people. He's a guy who knows when to use violence, when to use fear, when to use compassion. He can do all of these things.
Metatextually, I think that's a reason that he has been a very adaptable character. Like why we can have daytime super cop Batman through the 60s, why we can have sci-fi adventurer Batman through the 50s. Not all of these feel 100% true to the character all the time, but he adapts very well and very easily. And now we get to a point where meta fiction is a thing we collectively want to play with in 2017, and folding all of those things into one character is cool. And not a whole lot of other characters give us that ability. Batman does.
Joshua, so a lot of great things here. I would love to hear one of your recommendations. If so, say people are really into It's Never Too Late, what would you recommend as like, hey, you like this episode? Check out this other thing.
All right. This is a very weird suggestion from a certain perspective. But since this is a retelling of A Christmas Carol, whether they meant it to be or not, I'm going to recommend my favorite retelling of The Christmas Carol, Scrooged.
I mean, Scrooge is kind of fantastic. Bill Murray, man.
It's actually really funny.
Yes.
It's actually really dark. And it actually pays off on the redemption. You believe Bill Murray's redemptive arc in a way that I don't always believe in Christmas Carol adaptations.
Right. I mean, Joshua, now you've got me wrestling. How do I choose between my new favorite Christmas Carol adaptation, Batman the Animated Series, or the Muppet Christmas Carol? And no, I'm not joking. That's my favorite version of the Christmas Carol. I can watch it every year.
I don't think that's a thing to be ashamed of. And I also think that there's enough distance from the Christmas part that you don't have to choose.
Yes. Have my ice cream and eat it too. There we go.
About yourself. Tell me about your recommendation based on if somebody would love It's Never Too Late.
I wanted to look at a noir that was a little more redemptive. Again, it's noir, crime thriller, so there's not a lot of redemptive stories out there, but
it's true. The happy ending, the redemptive ending to a story this steeped in noir tradition, very unexpected, very rare. Do you have one for us?
I'm going to throw The Road to Perdition out there. It
Okay.
is a graphic novel as well as a film that is a really great film. The best you can usually hope for in a mob crime noir is your main character doesn't end up dead and ends up being discontent but alive. That was one of the more redemptive ones I could find. Again,
no, absolutely, because you have a son with a hope for the future. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So I recommend definitely go out and read the graphic novel, and the movie's great. The movie is top notch. So I highly recommend that.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, and all manner of other sorts of pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. On Twitter, again, that's at letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief at a film website that specializes in in-depth critique and analysis of film, thecinematropolis.com. And we publish essays on all types of films, good comic book movies, all that good stuff, including some thoughts from my co-host Joshua here. And you can find all of those at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough, at Joshua Unruh. I'm happy to field any superhero questions you might have, and who knows, it might even become a podcast unto itself. I'll also keep you in the loop on any fiction, articles, podcasts, or diatribes I cast out into the world, including my work at the Cinematropolis and for Pulp Diction Productions and Press.
Join us next time for Heart of Ice, where Joshua and I find out how many ice-cold puns we can throw at a special guest. That's episode 14 of the first season of Batman the Animated Series.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Animated Discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following @Joshua Unruh on Twitter, or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions. And a special thanks to Vinnie Hogan for our original theme music.